Hex, the 1980 Hong Kong remake of an unbeatable French thriller, plays its cards just right. Here I am, a huge fan of French classics, Chinese B-movies, film noir, and practical gore, and Kwei Chih-hung drops a movie at exactly that crossroads. Since that crossover audience is not huge, I'm going to briefly summarize the original, 1955's masterpiece, Les Diaboliques. It's a towering classic that many others, more erudite than myself, have gushed about elsewhere, so I'm going to keep this to surface level. Go listen to those guys first, or better yet, watch the movie and come back, because any review of Hex can't happen without spoilers. Henri-Georges Clouzot's Les Diaboliques was actually one of the very first films to issue spoiler alerts, both in its closing credits, please don't spoil this for others, and even in its advertisements. Don't even hear about this film before you go see it. But I knew the basic story of Les Diaboliques, including the twist, before ever seeing it, and the movie was no less powerful for having been spoiled. So if you're okay with spoilers, here we go. The setting is a rundown boarding school on the outskirts of Paris, owned by the downtrodden headmistress. Like any good French wife, she's on good terms with her husband's lover, a stylish teacher who can make even hiding her shiner look cool. Cool glasses. The school bustles with mischievous students and incompetent staff, teeming with a slice-of-life vivacity that French cinema did so well mid-century. Argent de poche, the 400 coups. But tensions quickly rise as the women put a plot into motion to murder the brutish headmaster. Possible catastrophe dogs every step of their perfect crime, especially since the wife, a frail Catholic who'd prefer to commit murder than divorce, threatens repeatedly to blow it, possibly to save her soul. The brassy, competent mistress coaches her all the way, like an all-female production of Macbeth. But while the Macbeths are haunted by the ghosts of blood and Banquo, these two women face an even more unsettling problem. The husband's corpse simply disappears. The tight, supportive bond these women have shared unravels. Worse, someone, probably a potential blackmailer, drops clues that someone knows what they did last weekend. A schoolboy claims to have seen the dead husband prowling the halls, and a droll retired detective follows the wife home, hoping to help locate her missing husband for a small fee. One night, the proofs of the husband's ghost become too much. The wife finds his body in her bathtub, just as they had drowned him many miles away. He rises from the water, and she collapses, her heart failing her. Jumping ahead here slightly, I'd like to point out that this same heart attack scene in Hex actually looks cooler, and in my lowbrow opinion, is a more effective ending for her character. Anyhow, once she's dead, the husband removes his ghastly disguise. The mistress appears, and it's revealed that all of this has been a plot to kill the wife via natural causes and take her money. No sooner do we learn this than the detective pops up and arrests them both. We are left with the students mourning the headmistress, all except for one, the school liar again, who claims to have seen her spirit stalking the halls. Enter Hex. Confession. I actually recorded a much longer version of this video, yeah I know, that compared Hex to the laughably bad 1996 American version of Diabolique as an example of how not to remake a film.
Hey, that's Dr. Baran's. You remember the close-up in the office when he was playing with it?
I cut all that because it felt a bit mean-spirited, but I will say this in its favor. Sharon Stone, Isabella Johnny, and Kathy Bates are all typecast and handed truly awful, half-smart dialogue.
Anyway, flash forward 10 years, I'm on medical leave. The big C. Air.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
Look, don't worry about it. Everything will be fine.
Stone, clearly fed up with the genre of psychosexual thrillers that she'd helped popularize, knew how bad this film was, and she gave every terrible line the ham-fisted delivery it deserved.
Secondhand smoke does kill too, you know.
Not reliably.
Not until Bill Murray in Wild Things 2 years later did an actor submarine a film so thoroughly because they were the only person on set who knew what a turd of a movie they were making.
Honey, if I couldn't get a man to leave her, I wouldn't kill him, I'd kill myself.
It's kind of magnificent.
Vaya con Dios. Okay?
Going back to Hex, I wouldn't claim that Chen Tzu-chia is remotely on par with Signoret's brilliant, hard-as-nails schoolteacher in Les Diaboliques, but the swing between Chen's brave, righteous servant girl and her true self, coquettish, wicked, and willful, makes for a fun split performance. And Tien Ni, cast against type here as a traditional subservient wife, acquits herself well. But enough of that. In Hex, the plot is about to thicken. Clouzot's carefully plotted 2 hours are packed efficiently into the first 40 minutes of this Hong Kong remake. The rough and tumble world of the boarding school is emptied out, leaving a near-abandoned mansion where only a husband and his sickly wife live, lovelessly, with the wife's faithful servant. The camera swoops through empty corridors and self-opening gates and doors at floor level. The ghoulish lighting is far from the stark shadow play of film noir. Instead of a realist interpersonal drama, we've entered a horror film. Director Kwei Chi-hung does not dwell on the malicious delights of a perfectly executed crime. Instead, the servant rashly drowns the brutal husband during a convenient rainstorm and calls for the wife to help finish him off. In Les Diaboliques, they lure the husband away for a discreet murder and then sneak back to dump his body in the school pool as an accident. In Hex, they simply lug the guts to a fetid pond outside the front door. This pond adds an icky layer as an old peasant fishes there, not knowing that the murky water hides more than one corpse. The servant's apparent crime of passion, actually a premeditated fake-out, makes her crueler than the calculating mistress played by Simone Signoret in the original. Rather than seducing the skittish wife into participating in the crime, the maid coerces her to become her accomplice before the wife could even consider the consequences. Otherwise, the opening section of the film follows the story of Les Diaboliques pretty closely, even if the tone is worlds apart. Taking inspiration from Clouzot's School Liar, Hex goes full ghost story in Act 2. We'd already started down that road as the husband pretended to haunt his sickly wife, but at that point every thrill was explained away as a dream or a bit of latex. When the wife comes back from the dead, she pulls out every trick you would want from an 80s horror film. Her ghoulish face follows the adulterous couple, a peddler, and then a priest. Her body, discovered next to her husband in bed, is hacked to pieces, spewing green goop, definitely dead and yet definitely not finished with him. Her sentient, severed hand is just as well executed and inexplicable as anything in Evil Dead 2. These effects are a lot of fun, and deployed with more restraint than in gore fests like Bewitched or The Boxer's Omen. For me, the ghost's eeriest scene is her initial posthumous appearance. The new mistress, asserting her new authority, orders for all the furniture in the wife's bedroom to be burned, and the dead wife appears and matter-of-factly countermands the order. This calm, terrestrial-looking ghost speaks with the authority that she lacked while she was alive. Many, perhaps most viewers, find this comic portion of the film out of place, in what's otherwise a suspenseful and atmospheric thriller. I'd argue that it exemplifies the sort of ghosts you find in old Chinese legends. They interact with mortals, even marrying and settling down after death as if they had every right to enjoy themselves just like they had in life. It also shows Kwei Chi-hung's versatility. Kwei is probably best known in the West for his icky horror films like Hex's unrelated sequels, Bewitched and The Boxer's Omen, but his filmography is all over the map. He made Killer Constable, a phenomenal Dirty Harry-like swordplay drama. He did 2 Women Behind Bars exploitation adventures, The Bamboo House of Dolls and Virgins of the Seven Seas. He'd done broad comedies like Mr. Funnybone and The Restless Cricket, and he got his start as an assistant director with wide-ranging genres, from tropical melodramas to musicals to hip comedies to classic adaptations, learning from many of the Shaw Brothers' lean, mean kings of efficient, audience-friendly filmmaking. Hex delivers in almost every category I just listed. It's a tense thriller, a gooey effects-laden black magic film, a comedy, a period melodrama, and an exploitation flick. Hex cannot beat Les Diaboliques at its own lean, logical game, so it changes the rules. Les Diaboliques demanded that audiences enter the cinema not knowing what to expect. Hex did the opposite, showcasing a naked, bald woman covered in writing on its posters. Well into the film, we're still waiting for that scene as the wife's ghost messes with everyone's heads, and eventually scares her husband right over a balcony to his death. The second wife, her other killer, is now left alone in the malevolent mansion, so she hires an exorcist to purify the place, and we run headlong into that scene. In the ghost's bedroom, the exorcist casts the vengeful spirit, or Mo Gui, yes, that word that was later appropriated for the cuddly monsters in Gremlins, who were Chinese after all. She casts the Mo Gui into the living vessel of a beautiful statuesque nude, whose body is covered with magic sigils. The woman writhes around, being forced to crush the ashes of magic spells with herself, and is suddenly replaced by a naked, shaven-headed Jin Su-jia, who's also painted over with magical words, or at least her body double is. Is the second wife, like Clouzot's guilt-ridden Catholic, trying to expiate her crime? Does her shorn head imply some newfound faith in Buddhism? We aren't clearly told, but one thing is for sure, it doesn't work. The dead wife's ghost interrupts and takes her revenge. This scene goes on for about 10 minutes, and it's as memorable as it is baffling. I'll confess, thankfully, near total ignorance of Chinese exorcisms. All I know I've learned from the movies, but I do know that an audience for an R-rated film expects R-rated content, and the irony is that Les Diaboliques staunchly refuses to deliver on sex or violence. Sure, it's a movie about two attractive women who kill the man that they're both sleeping with, but it's not a remotely sexy story. The American remake tried to address this by shoehorning in a rather sad scene of a nude Isabella Johnny suffering a heart attack, and then reintroducing a homoerotic attraction between the two leads, a relationship Clouzot had excised from Les Diaboliques' source novel. Just as well as Sharon Stone and Isabella Johnny produce about as many sparks as a wet dish rag. Hong Kong black magic movies, similarly, demanded a slice of sleaze. There had to be a topless romp on a beach in Thailand, or a seedy hookup with an unscrupulous millionaire to let you know which characters deserve to die an icky death. It's not much different from American slashers in the same era, where teens needed to sneak off for sex before they found themselves impaled. Hex doesn't really have room for all that. What's more, Quay set Hex in superstitious pre-modern China. The advantage? Gone are the xenophobic portrayals of Southeast Asian wizards, as well as the polyester suits and smoggy skylines that bind most black magic movies to their era. The disadvantage? This period piece does not allow much wiggle room for the requisite gratuitous nudity. So instead, Quay inserts a thematically appropriate, highly stylized, and absurdly long piece of what the MPAA would call graphic nudity, which I suppose is the opposite of unseen nudity, which happens all the time.
Underneath their clothing, the entire population of the world is walking around completely naked.
It's utterly unnecessary, but wow, what a spectacular way to check off a box. Anyhow, Hex keeps going, with an epilogue that harkens back deep into its own roots, and the roots of Les Diaboliques. According to cinema lore, Clouzot had bought the rights to the source novel, Celle qui n'était plus, from authors Pierre Boileau and Thomas Narcejac, beating out Hitchcock to the rights by only a few hours. This disappointed not only Hitchcock, who later adored Clouzot's creation, but the authors themselves, who could have had their book adapted by the world's greatest director of thrillers. They responded by writing another novel, this time especially for Hitchcock, called D'entre les morts. Hitchcock did buy the rights to that one, producing Vertigo, acclaimed as one of his best all-time films. Vertigo also centers on the reappearance of somebody known to be dead. In Vertigo, a series of women are reincarnated to die again and again by suicide at the same spot, and they haunt the detective who's led them there. Like Hex, Vertigo eventually gives a rational explanation for these doppelgangers. The first body the detective sees falling is in fact the real corpse of the woman the man thinks is his lover, but who actually he never met. Her reincarnation is his actual lover, who had pretended to be the dead woman in order to cover her murder. Just watch it if you haven't. It makes sense, and it's a terrific film. Hex unveils a similar plausible explanation for the ghost of the first wife in the latter half. The phantom wife, it turns out, was actually the identical twin of the heart attack victim, who stepped into her dead sister's shoes to exact revenge on her brother-in-law. The body the husband desecrates in bed actually is the corpse of the original victim. The first half of this movie is Les Diaboliques. The second half borrows its solution from Les Diaboliques' younger sibling, Vertigo. In the often nonsensical and sometimes purely shocking world of classic Hong Kong horror, Hex stands apart. It takes the artful storytelling and belief in atmosphere that had made Les Diaboliques great, and does something thoroughly Chinese and artistically all its own with the same story. Each film makes me appreciate the other more deeply, and both remind me that as much as I love my country and I love our movies, we really should stay away from trying to remake anything from France or China.